Hi, my name is Ozan and I'm a brand designer. First of all, thank you to everyone who submitted their questions through the Go platform. I'll do my best to answer all of them one by one. Let's begin. What is your process for creating new logos for clients? First of all, I listen to the client. I put myself in their shoes and focus on truly understanding what they do, how they do it, and how I can help. I ask them some questions to better understand their vision and decide if they need to start with brand strategy. If they can easily answer all of my questions and they really know why they are doing what they are doing, then I don't offer that service. If they have a hard time coming up with meaningful answers, that means there's a problem. Even the best designed logo in the world may not help a brand without a strategy. That would be like building a tower on a watery surface. It doesn't matter how beautiful the tower looks if the foundation is not strong enough. If the client is willing to discover the brand promise and the brand story that would differentiate them in the competition, then I include my brand strategist partner to the process. All together with the active contribution of the client, we come up with a strong, unique strategy for the brand and get ready for the design phase. With all the information I gained during the strategy process and the unique brand story that we built, I start designing the logo. In the logo design presentation I share with my clients, there are multiple design options with background information and some brand-specific photorealistic mock-ups so that they can see how each logo would look in real life. In the final slide, I place all logos together to make it easier for them to compare and make their final decision. Sometimes the client falls in love with one of the logos immediately, but sometimes they like multiple designs and ask for minor revisions to see if their input would work. At that point, brand's sake is more important than my personal taste, so I do my best to make it happen as long as the request is reasonable. If not, I kindly tell them that it won't work or it would harm their brand. Once the logo is selected, I create a basic brand style guide with logo lookups like the vertical version, horizontal version, how it would look in small areas, the ideal spacing to be used, and then the color scheme, typefaces, and guidance on how not to use the logo. I provide this guide regardless of the client's request. Even if they don't ask for it, they get it. Because that's the guardian of the brand I design. That will prevent third parties like printers, sponsors, or media to alter the logo design, use it in the wrong way, and ruin the way the brand looks. That's my process for creating logos for clients. In hindsight, which branding related things did you overlook when you were a less experienced designer? I learned how important brand strategy is. In the early years of my career, I mostly focused on the visual design aspect of it. To me, there were beautifully designed logos and ugly logos. Today, I have a significantly better understanding of how brands operate and why some succeed while others fail. When you realize that a brand is more than just a logo, you start digging deeper. You understand that even the tone of voice of the call center representative is a part of the brand experience. With that perspective, you discover new ways to design better, tailor-made logos that actually work and elevate the brands. Could we say that personal brand identity is the visual representation of a professional's personality, values, educational background, and the field of work on printed and digital media? That might be one of the valid definitions, but you don't necessarily have to include all those aspects and exclude others while designing a personal brand identity. Some professionals include their personality traits in their brand. Others choose to use a different persona in their work lives. For example, you may like to wear black when you are with your friends, but choose to wear yellow pants at every business meeting. If you have a yellow logo, yellow business card, yellow phone case, yellow pants and eyeglasses with yellow frames, it wouldn't be easy to ignore your presence. You don't have to go to the grocery store with that outfit though. That's just your work self. But of course, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be yourself. If the persona you choose is extremely different from who you really are, you may not maintain consistency and your brand may fail. If you're designing a personal brand identity for a client, you have to put yourself in her shoes. You need to understand who she is, who her clients are, how she gets in contact with her clients, and those kinds of things. Does she prefer talking on the phone? Does she text more? Or does she use emails all the time? And who are her clients? Are they mostly women or men or both? Are they parents? Are they rich or middle class? And how do her clients find her? On the web, on a dictionary, on social media, or on Yelp maybe? All those details would help you think her as a real brand, and it would be easier for you to come up with the right design solutions. Sometimes we get projects from brands that offer services or products we are not entirely familiar with in terms of visual codes. In such cases, how do you keep motivated? I had felt the same way when I used to design movie posters in Hollywood. One day you get a wonderful psychological thriller made by a legendary director. The next day you get a TV show that focuses on a Louisiana family that owns a duck hunting business. I remember having a hard time keeping motivated at those times. But to me, brand design is a little different. Unless the brand I'm working for intentionally harms people or the planet, I just enjoy the process. What keeps me motivated must be the fact that each brand is like a living creature. It is born and raised by someone. It has a personality. It has certain capabilities, talents, pain points, vulnerabilities, friends and clients. And you, as the brand designer, have a vital importance in its life. You set its character. You decide how people will feel when they're exposed to that brand. It doesn't really matter if it's a cute bakery, a sleek jewelry store, or a storage company. I believe that there is no such thing as a boring company. Well, Elon Musk has one, but that's a different thing. You can make every brand look good and make a huge difference in its life. Another thing is that I enjoy learning new things, and unfortunately we don't have much time these days to fulfill that need. But working with clients in different industries requires research, and that teaches you a lot of new things, which opens up new horizons, which leads up to a bigger, richer inspiration source in your mind. You may want to look from that perspective to keep motivated. It works for me, and I hope it will work for you too. Why does a brand book matter? How should we present it to a client? To me, the brand book is the constitution of the brand identity. If you found a new country and don't write a constitution for it, it is inevitable that there will be chaos very soon. It's the same for the brand's future. Even the most beautifully designed brand identity can fail if it's not used properly and consistently. With the brand book, you set standards, certain rules, and some restrictions. Then it's delivered to in-house teams, advertising agencies, social media companies, printers, sponsors, and all other third parties so that everybody knows how to and how not to use the identity. It saves the company time and energy and protects its authenticity and prestige by maintaining the quality of the design. Because of all that, I don't offer a brand book as a separate service when I work for a client's brand identity. I provide it for free to protect the brand and also my efforts. That free guide includes basic but crucially important elements such as logo lookups, color codes, fonts, and guidance on how not to use the logo. But of course, in some cases, brands need more comprehensive style guides that you can't just provide for no additional cost. I recently worked on a global company's rebranding project, and its guide was 94 pages long. It has every single detail from the nuances in photography they use in different seasons to multiple color schemes they applied in various occasions. It is fun to browse, but requires a ton of work to create. What is your progress pattern when you are working on the tough one? I don't remember having a tough brand identity project at the beginning. Listening to the client first and getting a lot of feedback before designing anything makes the process a lot easier. And if you get involved in the brand strategy process too, then it turns to a total peace of mind for me. Without touching my pencil or my computer, I start having some solid ideas in my mind. But of course, it doesn't mean that I'm not having any difficulties during the design process. In some cases, I am not satisfied with what I come up with, or the great idea doesn't look that great on screen. So I might get stuck, but it doesn't take too long. At those times, I focus on the brand itself instead of diving into infinite inspiration sources like Pinterest or Behance or Dribbble. I try to feel the brand more. I try to feel like I'm a part of it, or maybe its owner or a potential customer of it. That helps me find out the emotions I need to trigger in people's minds. Sometimes what makes the project tough might be the client. They may not like what we design, they may want to change the brief in the middle of the project, or ask for a direction that will definitely not work. But I think I overcome those possibilities by discussing with the client beforehand. I ask them some specific questions to get the answers I need. If I disagree with the idea that the client shares with me, I stop there and argue. Of course, in a kind and reasonable way. And most of the time, they are convinced because they feel that you genuinely care, and what is important is the brand itself, not our personal tastes or preferences, not mine as the designer, and not even him or her as the owner. I think all those precautions that I take help me keep my process the same in every project. So no matter if it's an easy or difficult project, my process is almost the same. What is your favorite corporate brand identity in Turkey? I have lived in Turkey for 25 years before moving to Los Angeles in 2008, and I still closely follow what's happening in the country, but I'm not that familiar with the new brands, so I'll try to answer this question considering the old and established brands. One of my favorites is a global brand, the Turkish Airlines brand. It was originally created in 1956 in the logo design contest held by the company, and then refined a few times. It's beautifully simple and iconic. Another one is the Koç Holding logo, which was designed by Ivan Chermayev. I had the privilege to interview him in Bak magazine years ago. He was a brilliant designer, and I think his Koç logo is quite strong and completely timeless, just like his other work. The İş Bankası logo is also great. Letters E and Ş are intertwined in a beautifully balanced way. And of course the Ziraat Bankası logo, where letters T, C, Z and B come together to create a remarkably iconic grain symbol. It lost a little bit of its essence in the last rebranding approach, but the idea is still there. What was the project that excited you the most? It's hard to name one project, but there are some firsts that I can't forget. My first commercial project, for example, I was 16 years old back then, and I designed a website for a construction company, and I got paid. That was incredible. And then I started a music portal called Müzik Kutusu. It was the same year. Müzik Kutusu means jukebox in English, by the way, and got my first award, which was also unforgettable. A few years later, I moved to Los Angeles and started working for a motion picture advertising agency. On my very first day, that Monday, I kicked off the home entertainment package design project for the legendary movie Waterworld. I can't forget that moment and that feeling. And I think the last most memorable moment for me was the time when I got my first project for my own design studio here in Los Angeles. It was from a fire safety company, and they are still my client after more than 5 years. How to create a narrative in a brand project presentation. I really like creating a narrative in my presentations. The story may differ significantly depending on each brand's unique characteristics, but let me try to share some of my starting points with you. When there is already a brand story, professionally crafted by a brand strategist, it has already become the primary inspiration source for me while designing the brand identity. So it automatically leads me to a beautiful and highly relevant narrative for my design presentation. I design the logos based on that story, so it's easy to tell the relationship between the designs and the strategy. If there isn't that kind of a story though, I handle the situation in a different way. At the beginning of the presentation, I explain what made me design the logos in the way I designed them. Let's say I'll show 5 logo design options in the deck and they are all highly minimalistic. If I designed them that way, there should have been a reason behind it initially. So I share it with the viewer. I tell them why a busy or fancy logo would be wrong for their brand and why a minimalistic approach makes more sense in their case. Or if I used a specific element in the logos like an object or a particular shape, I tell them why it's relevant to their brand before showing any design work, and I prepare them for what they're about to see. If I used a limited color scheme and specific color tones, which I mostly do, I clarify the reason behind that choice using color psychology. That way I underline that I don't just choose the color for my personal taste, but there's a strategic and psychological background to it. Since it's based on facts, they don't come to me and say, well, we like logo number 3 a lot, but can we try it in purple? So overall, I use a narrative that justifies what I designed and their relationship with the brand's personality. That way, I prove to the client and myself that the brand design I come up with is visually appealing and strategically meaningful. And also, remember that this is a presentation. It is some kind of a show, and the audience needs to be entertained, wowed, surprised, or challenged. Try to trigger an emotion, even if it's just trust and fulfillment. What are some sources you would recommend to someone who doesn't have a design education? First of all, the content and quality of design education dramatically differ from country to country and school to school. Some are better in theoretical education but lack practical education, or vice versa. And sadly, some of them are not even good in either of them. What I'm trying to say is, design education may not be absolutely necessary or as highly effective as you may think. In an era where we all have access to an infinite number of educational videos, tutorials, and designer interviews, one can easily educate himself without attending to a school. The main reason why we started the Go Branding platform is to share our 20+ year experience and knowledge with people worldwide. Many other initiatives offer the same, of course. Christo's Future, FUTUR, is probably the most comprehensive of those platforms. In their YouTube channel, there are hundreds of informative videos about almost everything related to design and marketing. No clickbaits, no sneak peeks that say, pay this amount to watch the rest. It's an honest and exceptionally helpful channel to learn how to design and improve your already built career. Adobe Creative Cloud is another great YouTube channel you would benefit from. They have live events which you can contribute with your questions, great tutorials from experienced colleagues, inspirational designer stories, and a lot more. Adobe's Creative Jam series is also a fun way to practice design and get feedback from masters. Satori Graphics, SATORI, is also a quite popular channel with more than 500,000 subscribers. It has helpful tips, tutorials, and studies that can help you sharpen your skills and learn more on the fundamentals of design. If you're in the United States, AIGA is quite helpful. If not, you may look for your local design institutions like GMK in Turkey. Of course, there are dozens of other channels and platforms on the web to learn more on design, like some paid platforms such as Lynda and Coursera. Lynda, by the way, is acquired by LinkedIn, and its courses are free for the first month of your membership, so you can go for it too. And finally, Go, the best source in the entire planet ever. I'm kidding, but we have some exciting plans for the future of Go, and we sincerely appreciate your support. What is your source of design inspiration? I know that this is not what you're asking, but my main source of design inspiration is the project I'm working on itself. The unique qualities of the brand I'm working on and the vision of the owner of that company inspire me more than any other design source. That helps me feel the soul of the brand and design unique elements instead of following some trends and creating work similar to other designers. But of course, there are other inspiration sources I benefit from as well. When I'm not working on a particular client project, I look around to see what is new and what others are doing. I expose myself to a visual feast by browsing perfectly curated design books and beautiful work from people I follow online. My sources are probably the most common ones. I really like Behance and the beautifully crafted case studies there. If I'm researching about a particular subject or industry, I may prefer maybe Pinterest and sometimes Dribbble. Instagram also has many nicely curated design accounts that you can easily find by searching for keywords like design inspiration, branding inspiration, packaging inspiration, and things like that. When you follow some profiles there and some on Twitter, your timelines are bombarded with design inspiration. For the uninitiated, why do you think whether their brand or product needs a story is a discussion point? This is more of a brand strategy question, which is Günter's field, but let me try to explain from my perspective. I would say that not many clients are familiar with brand narratives, so there are a few ways of introducing the concept. But before that, here's a word of caution. Most people eventually get excited by talking about stories. But based on my experience, there is a type of no-nonsense client that gets uncomfortable discussing abstract concepts. So my first advice would be to assess the client very carefully. If you run into one of those clients, my suggestion would be not to force-feed storytelling. Now, if you think your client will appreciate discussing about narratives, the first thing you can do is to ask them to tell you stories during the kickoff meeting. Stories about their customers, about their stakeholders, about the genesis of their brand, so on and so forth. Another tactic is to ask them to imagine their brand dynamic as a narrative. Who is the hero? Who is the villain? What do those two want? And what is the conflict between them? Who else benefits if the hero overcomes the villain? That's a fun little exercise we often use. A third way is to introduce them to archetypes, but remember, this is an advanced tactic. For this to work, you must know archetypes inside out. If you don't, you can always ask the help of someone who is familiar with archetypal psychology. That's what I do when I want to bring it up. I get Günter involved in the process. If there is no way he joins the conversation, I just skip that part. Finally, there's a more factual way. Research shows that human brain has evolved to categorize and memorize facts in a narrative format. If we are shown the same info as a story, we remember it 7 times more compared to bullet point presentations. So we can use that as your introduction and then ask the client, so what is the story of your brand? That's how we introduce storytelling to our clients. If you'd like to learn more about this subject, Günter has some brilliant book recommendations for you. The first one is called What Story Are You Living by Carol Pearson and Hugh Mark. The second one is My Story Can Beat Up Your Story by Jeffrey Allen Chester. And finally, Circle of the Nine Muses by David Hutchins. Do you download mockups or make them yourself, and how important are they? I think using mockups is quite important in design presentations. It gives the viewer a much better understanding of how each logo design would look in real-life situations. You provide them the opportunity to visualize the final output. But you have to pay attention to what kind of mockups you use. If it's an old digital brand that lives in the mobile device, like Instagram for example, it doesn't make much sense to show the logos on cardboard packaging or oversized trucks. Or if it's a toothpaste for example, there's no reason to show their logo on a flag or a sticker placed on a cool MacBook computer. You should study the customer touchpoints and try to focus on those to be understandable and relatable. Most of the time, I download mockups, but in some cases where I need to show applications on unique packaging or on particular shapes or in specific locations, then I do create my mockups from scratch. In one of your earlier presentations, you emphasized the importance of understanding brand strategy. What steps should we take to turn into a strategy-oriented brand designer? The term brand strategy sounds a bit scary, so I'd like to know where to start. That's a great question. It's been almost 10 years since I was actually introduced to brand strategy. In this 10 years of time, I always had a brand strategist next to me. We joined countless number of client meetings, discussed about methods, exchanged books, traveled to events, and presented our work to clients together. So I learned a lot about brand strategy, which questions to ask the clients, what points we need to pay attention to, and all that. But I never intended to become a brand strategist myself, because I clearly realized that it requires a different mindset and a different extra life. Can you become the most talented soccer player in Spain and a legendary violin player in Russia in your lifetime? Well, I don't think so. Therefore, I always prefer working with people who dedicated their lives to their area of work, just like I do as a designer. So I don't recommend any designer to attempt to become a brand strategist because I personally think that it's not possible. But knowing what I know about brand strategy will significantly elevate your work. The term brand strategy is only scary if you'd like to truly specialize in it. Other than that, don't let the technical terms scare you. Brand strategy is strategy for brands. When you read a strategy deck, you don't just get lost or feel like you're reading something in a language that you don't speak. It is mostly very clear and easy to understand. Remember, those decks are not for strategists. They are for clients working in any kind of an industry. If you want to turn into a strategy-oriented brand designer, finding a strategist partner would probably be the best thing you can do. And yes, that may be the most difficult part. But there are other relatively easier things to do as well. You can read some books and articles to learn and understand the fundamentals of brand strategy. Make a quick research about what methods are used and see if there are easy to understand books on the shelves to take a look at. For example, there are some great ones about archetypes. One of my favorites is Archetypes in Branding, a Toolkit for Creatives and Strategists by Margaret Pot Hartwell and Joshua Chen. This is a beautifully designed coffee table book style source that is fun to read and study, and there are of course many other in that category. And our strategy-related articles in the Go platform are highly informative, and we intentionally use a simple language there for everybody to easily understand what we are talking about. Stay tuned for some nice surprises too. How can we find the best project opportunity with rich and visionary people? Working with visionary people and brands is certainly a privilege. I consider myself lucky that most of my clients have that quality. Honestly, I don't put an extra effort to find those kinds of opportunities, but if I do, I would follow brands that introduce disruptive technologies, those who aim to democratize their services and industries, or the ones that are sensitive to certain social issues. I think those are some strong signs that a brand and its owners can be considered visionaries. Then I would contact them and to find out if they need any of my creative services, and then pray that they're rich too. A freelance designer can often have the chance to work with visionary brands, but finding exceptionally well-paying jobs might be a bit more challenging. As a client, if you allocate $50,000 or more for a brand identity design project, then you may want to go with an established design agency who is known for the identities they designed for some giant brands. It doesn't necessarily mean that the delivered work will be better than yours, because obviously designers like us work in those agencies too, but it's understandable for that kind of a client to pay extra for the prestige. If you want to play that big, but do not consider scaling and becoming an agency with a team of 25 people, then you may focus more on your personal branding and promote yourself as a design leader. It requires a ton of work, patience and dedication for sure, but it may be worth it. Which major branding project done in the past would you have liked to be a part of? If you're asking about some of my favorite branding projects that I would have been happy to get involved in, I could say MasterCard, Premier League, Airbnb, Target. I don't know, there are like many more I really like. But if the question is about the missed opportunities or the brands I would like to desperately redesign, then I would go with GM as a recent example. We also wrote an article on Go about their new logo. From strategy and design perspective, you can read it on our Medium page. And Tesla could definitely use a good rebranding. It is an amazing brand, but I don't think the same thing for its visual identity. I think it really deserves a more well thought out and more beautifully crafted design. Other than that, most of the government agencies and departments have horrible designs for some reason. I would love to be hired by the imaginary, visionary government of any country to completely redesign the brand identity of all of its departments in a beautiful and consistent way. What is the perfect brief? When the client can't provide one, how can we get what we need from them? That's a great question. The perfect brief is the one that automatically answers the fundamental questions about the project. It clearly tells us the objectives, key messages, preferred marketing channels, certain things to consider or stay away from, maybe some creative suggestions and ideas, useful information about the target audience, and a precise list of deliverables and things along those lines. When we receive a proper brief including the above, almost half of our job is done. We know where to start, what the client thinks and needs, and we already have the answers to most of our questions. But when there's no such guidance or serious inconsistencies or misleading points in the brief, it is our job to lead the way and help the client create a good one. In those cases, we share a brand questionnaire with our client. Most of the questions in it are the generic ones we come up with, and they are applicable to almost any kind of a brand. Sometimes we also add client or industry-specific questions if there's anything particular to be addressed. That Q&A exercise helps the brand owner think more deeply about the company's vision, mission, and goals, as well as the project itself. You challenge him or her to come up with a consistent series of input which clarify both of your minds. Another positive outcome of that session is that what client comes up with is now set in stone, and if he attempts to change it on the way, it is his responsibility to cover the additional expense. So if you have the perfect brief, great. If you don't, make it yourself. And here's a little help from Go for that. In a couple of weeks from now, we will release the brand questionnaire we use and share it with our followers for free. We believe that you will highly benefit from it while working with your clients, so stay tuned. That's it for today. Thank you so much for your brilliant questions, and thank you for following Go on Twitter, Instagram, and Medium. Again, we are on those platforms under the name The Go Branding. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.